Hello YouTube. Today I'm going to tell you about the worst modification you can ever make to your Mazda 3. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to tell you how you can lose performance, not do shit for sound really. Oh, and get a check engine light. Alright, you want to know the secret? The secret is you remove your intake resonator. Oh yeah. Yesterday I had the idea because I wanted more intake noise from my car. And I was looking into it, and apparently on a lot of the older Mazda 3s, people would remove the intake resonator. So I decided I would give it a shot, you know. No one had done it with this model of car, this model year that I know of, and if they did, it's not very easy to find the information on it. But I decided, hey, what the hell, it can't be that hard. So I took the whole intake apart yesterday when I got out of work, which I will be putting some parts of that video into this. I was completely expecting to do a different video. I was expecting to do a video on how awesome of a free mod that was and how well it worked. But it really did not work all that great. Sorry if I'm a little loopy. I didn't sleep all that much last night either. Just kind of stayed up way too late, and I'm heading into work, so that's always fun, but enough about that. Back to the intake. So I took the intake apart, took the intake resonator off, and first thing I noticed was not much of a difference in sound. It was a little bit louder, but it wasn't like a huge night and day difference like I was hoping it would be. I was hoping it would sound somewhere between a stock intake and a cold air intake, which usually a cold air intake or a short ram intake sound pretty good, especially under full throttle. I really didn't notice a huge difference. I had a bit more of a growl, but it wasn't a huge deal. But the main issue comes from the fact that my intake air temperatures were going up a bit because I now had a hole basically in the intake system that was allowing hot air from the engine compartment directly into the intake, whereas before it had some kind of, the car basically from factory, which you'll see in the video clip, has some kind of a ram air intake effect going on where it pulls in air from under the hood. I mean, it's not really a ram air intake, it bends around way too much, and any air velocity you actually gain in the stock configuration from the ram air is going to be lost by the time it gets to the air filter. But basically, factory location, it's pulling in nice cool air from in front of the bumper, or right under the hood, right around the grill. But when I had my mod done, there was a nice hole where the resonator was, which I know I could fix that. I could put a plug in where the hole is, which I've considered doing it again, but for the sound increase I got, which was a very small amount, it's not even worth the hassle. But because I had the hole there, basically the engine was pulling in some hot air from the engine bay in that hole. So my intake air temperatures were going up, and actually this could have just been, I don't know what it could have been, but I got a check engine light after driving the car around for about 20 minutes like that. And the check engine light was for high intake air temperatures, which I find that really surprising, honestly. Like, the temperatures weren't that high. And the fact that people install short ram intakes on these cars, which would be pulling in hot air from the same location that hole was in, and they don't have the issue apparently. So I still find it kind of suspect that I got a check engine light. Excuse me. But I did get a check engine light, I will point that out there. I cleared it, and I put the intake resonator back in, so that hole is no longer in my intake system. And yes, the hole is before the air filter, so I wasn't pulling in unfiltered air, it was still pulling in nice clean air. So yeah, gave me a check engine light, and honestly I felt like the car was down on some power too, which wouldn't surprise me, because when you think about it, you're pulling in hotter air for one, that's going to lower my power output, and two, if you consider the fact that that hole was there that wasn't there before it was kind of a closed loop, there's going to be a lot more air turbulence coming through the intake system, and that's going to make it harder for air to get to the air box. So I feel like there's probably actually reduced airflow with the other hole in the intake system. Because you don't want just random holes in your intake system. You want the air to come in as smoothly as possible. I don't know a ton about airflow, but from what I do know, you definitely want the intake air to come in pretty smoothly. Same with exhaust. You want your exhaust to flow out smoothly. Your engine's basically an air pump. It pulls in air and it pumps out air. And you want that to be as smooth as possible, or you're wasting power trying to do just its basic functions. So yeah, the car felt like it was down on power a little bit too. It's tough to say because it's not like I have a dyno or anything, but the car just felt a little bit slower to me, which I wasn't expecting to gain power from that airbox mod by removing the intake resonator, but I wasn't expecting to lose a noticeable amount either. I was expecting it to be about the same. Maybe lose a little bit when the intake air temperature shot up when I was sitting still, but no, definitely felt noticeable in my opinion. So that's pretty much it, guys. I wanted to put this video out there to let you guys know, hey, don't bother trying to remove the intake resonator on a 2014 plus Mazda 3, at least on the 2.5 liter engine, which is what I have. The 2 liter is probably the same, I would imagine, but I don't know. I haven't taken one apart yet. But yeah, I figured I would let you guys know so you don't waste your time, because no one seemed to have tried it before I did. And people have tried it with other cars with mixed results, which is why I figured, hey, I'll give it a shot, see what happens. I was really hoping to get a nice deep growl for my intake from it, but that didn't really work out. Hey there YouTube, MotoMaster X5 here. Decided, got the bright idea earlier today to try to do some modifications to my car. By modifications I mean in particular removing the resonator from the air intake to get some more noise out of the intake system. I don't think it's really going to help any with performance other than removing the 1 pounder or so that the resonator weighs. Actually, it might even hurt performance until I cap off the bottom of the air box where the hole is where the resonator was, because now the intake will be drawing in hot air from the engine compartment. But basically this is where we're at. So, well, it would have been better if I showed you from the beginning. Here's the top of the air box. You can see it's loose now. The MAF sensor is down there, or still in there. This is what we took out. Well, part of it's going back in. So, this right here is the bottom of my airbox, or your airbox if you have a Mazda 3. Basically, it sits in there like this. Goes down, obviously that would be underneath that part of the airbox. And it's kind of like a ram air intake, except for the fact that it loops around so much, you're going to lose any of the ram air effect. But it pulls in basically air from the front of the hood. And on the bottom of that, you see that hole? That hole right there? It's hard to point while I hold the camera. Right there. This thing was hooked up to the bottom of that like such. And that is your, or your intake resonator. Basically designed just to cut the volume of the intake noise. So, I have removed that, and I'm going to see what it sounds like. And you guys will also hear what it sounds like momentarily. Voila, the intake is now back together. See what she sounds like. Alright guys, so we have Torque Pro app running on my phone, connected to my OBD2 port through a Bluetooth adapter so we can see the intake air temperatures in real time. We've got the intake resonator removed, and like I said, right now not hearing much of a difference, but we're gonna see what happens when we open the car up a bit. If we get an opening here, I'll gun it and hopefully we'll hear a difference. Sounds a little more aggressive, but honestly I'm not hearing a big difference. Let me shut the windows too, because I'm more used to hearing the car with the windows shut, so with them open I might be getting a false sense of more volume. God damn it. A false sense of more volume. Intake air temperatures still seem about the same, which is not a good sign. They're like 5 degrees hotter than they were earlier. It does sound a bit better, I think. I hear a little bit more intake noise, but it's really not as substantial as I was hoping it would be. And intake air temperatures are still up, but again, we're not going that quick. We are moving along though, so I would expect them to be dropping a bit by now. Basically what happened was I kept monitoring the intake air temperatures. They didn't seem like they were too high. They were a few degrees warmer, I would say, than they were before I did the intake resonator delete. However, later I parked the car obviously when I was done, started the car back up, and there was a check engine light. So I'm like, oh shit, this isn't good. Maybe I didn't plug the MAF back in properly, or something else is going on. So I ran a code reader, and it came up as high intake air temperatures, 115 degrees, which that doesn't sound too high to me. It was a lot higher than what I was getting earlier, but it's not that bad. So it still seems kind of suspicious. And also from the fact that I mentioned earlier, the fact that a short ram intake would be drawing air in from the same location that the hole in my air intake system was, so you would think anyone with a short ram intake system would be having the same check engine light. So maybe it was something to do with the mass airflow sensor being loose or whatnot. But regardless, the mod was not worth keeping, and honestly I would not recommend it. So thank you guys for watching, and as always, have a good day, YouTube.